So in this video, I will be continuing on with homeostasis and hormones. This is part 2. Last time in my previous video, I gave a brief overview of what it's all about. This time we'll continue in more detail. So stay tuned, and I guarantee you that everything in here is all you need to know, specifically for the IB. And there's no reason that you need to study anything else if you follow this video well. At the end, I have real IB questions that I explained. So you can skip to the end if you're just here for the questions. But this explanation is also really good, and I hope you stay tuned. So in this video, I'll focus on what happens in the isolates of Langerhans. This in the pancreas right here. So to start off, what is your blood glucose level? So blood, that's pretty self-explanatory according to the name. It's your glucose level in your blood, so how much glucose you have. And remember from my previous videos, if you watch them, glucose is the product of what is formed from digestion. So when you break down food, eventually it will become so small that is a form of glucose, so that now it can be absorbed into your body and into your bloodstream to be used for your daily activities, such as cellular respiration. Now this number matters. If it's too high, it can mean you have a condition called diabetes. So I want to show you now what your body does to make sure it doesn't go too high in normal people who don't have disabilities in controlling it. So in a normal person, so yeah, that's the definition. So what would you say is a normal blood glucose level? So it's actually a range. It's between 4 and 8 millimoles per dm cubed. That unit doesn't matter too much. Just remember that it's a range. And the reason being why it's a range is because it will be shown in this graph. So remember that when you eat at midnight, at 2, when you pass midnight, you're not eating anything. So your blood glucose level is staying the same. Nothing is changing. But when you eat, for example, here at 8 o'clock, looking at the time, your blood glucose level will shoot up because you're absorbing a lot of glucose now into your bloodstream, and it will reach a peak, and then it will slowly start going down because once you've stopped eating, you're going to use some of the energy now to walk, do exercise, or whatnot. But it doesn't decrease only because of that. It also decreases because of what hormones in your body are doing to make it decrease, because it will realize, oh no, it's really high. So we're going to have to bring it down a little bit. So in conjunction with your exercise and all that, it will bring it down again. And then eventually your lunchtime will come and you'll eat again, it will spike again. And then again, dinner time will come and it will spike again and bring it down. So the same process happens a few times in the day. So, but then we get to an important concept here, negative feedback. This could be quite confusing for most people, but I hope I explained it really well so you understand it. So negative feedback works like this. So your body will notice your body has a normal range. And we know that homeostasis makes sure it stays at that range. And homeostasis does that through a process of negative feedback. To explain how you can remember this is negative means something's wrong, right? So if your body, say your blood glucose level is going really high or your temperature is going really high, your body will say, oh no, something's negative, something's really bad, it's going really high. And then it will feed it back to your body. It will tell your body, something is negative, something is wrong, we gotta fix it. So then your body will release hormones and do homeostasis to bring it back to its normal range. So that's pretty much what negative feedback means. Something's wrong, gotta fix it. Something's negative, gotta fix it. Positive feedback, on the other hand, will be the opposite. So your body will be like, oh, this is not normal, but it's good, let's keep it going. An example of that would be when you're giving birth. For example, when your baby comes out, that's not a normal daily activity. So it is something off the normal. So it will be considered not normal, but it will be considered positive. So it will be like, yes, keep it going. So it will keep on doing it until the baby comes out. It will keep on releasing hormones that will allow the baby to come out. If it were to do negative feedback in that case, the baby would never be able to come out because it would say, oh, that's not normal, that's negative, let's prevent it from happening. So in some cases, you will need negative feedback, and in some cases, you'll need positive feedback. But for this chapter, you only focus on negative feedback. So to illustrate this, here's the definition. And I'll have a small diagram that you need to know for the IB. A diagram I made, but I tried to make it so you can you can understand what's happening. So remember, islets of Langerhans, that's the hormonal gland. And it consists of cells called alpha cells and beta cells, so two different kinds of cells. And I emphasize here the A and the B because this is how I think you can remember really well what their purpose is. So the alpha cells, the reason why I gave the A is because it is responsible for bringing above your glucose level. It's responsible for bringing it up. So when your glucose level is super low, the alpha cells will bring it above. Alpha cells above. And your beta cells is responsible for bringing it below when it is too high. So the B below. So if you can remember this, the A will stand for above, to bring it above, and the B will stand to bring it below. And it does that, these individual cells do that through releasing a hormone. So separate hormones. You've all heard of insulin perhaps. So beta cells will release the hormone, this is hormone, that will bring it below. The alpha cells will release glucagon, which is another hormone, which will bring it above. So you can see these different hormones have different purposes. And we'll see now an example right on the next page to really visually illustrate it, because I know it's pretty hard to learn without really seeing what's going on. So I'll try and use this diagram right here. So in your pancreas, remember, we have the islets of Langerhans, and they will release hormones. So these are the two hormones that they will release. Insulin or glucagon, depending on what your situation is. So let me visually explain here. So say your blood glucose level is extremely, let's say, high. Let's say you have so much blood, these are all glucoses, by the way. These individual things are glucose in your body. Let's say there's so much of it like this, and your body needs to bring it down. So according to the diagram, if you want to bring it below, you need beta cells, which release insulin. So this thing will come out of here. It will be released, and it will make sure that some of these are taken up by your body, taken out of the bloodstream into here, into your liver, because now it's less, right? That makes sense, because now there's less. But how does it just take it out? How does that happen? So insulin will take it out, but store it not like this anymore. It won't store it like glucose. It will attach all of these individual glucoses together in a ring or in a chain called glycogen. See? This is glycogen, because now it's neatly packed and organized and stored in your liver. So now pretend all of these were now put together like this as glycogen. So now there's less glucose in your body, and so the level was brought down and it was stored in your liver due to the help of insulin. Now let's go the reverse way. What if it's too low? Let's say this is too low. Let's say having only one is too low. So then what your body will do is need to bring it above, right? How does it bring it above? It needs alpha cells to release glucagon, the hormone. And make sure you know that these are not the same thing. Glucagon and glycogen is different. Glucagon is a hormone. Glycogen is a bunch of glucoses put together, like a way of storing glucose. So now it will try and bring it above by releasing glucagon. So here we have, now instead of having insulin, your body will release glucagon. Glucagon will do the opposite thing that insulin does. It will take this glycogen and break it apart into all its individual glucoses and then send it into your body. So it'll now break it up like this, send it into your body so that it can increase. So that's pretty much it. See, it's quite simple, and I hope this diagram really helped. So they basically do opposite things. And I hope this helped. The A and the A, remember it like this. It's much easier than to try and memorize it. Okay, so next we go into diabetes. So this whole process that I just explained is what happens in a normal person to control the blood glucose level. Now what happens if you're a diabetic? So in a diabetic, let's look at this diagram. So a diabetic is basically someone who cannot control their blood glucose level. When they eat a bunch of cake and their starch goes up, and their glucose level goes up, their body can't bring it down, like I just showed you in the process above. So what happens is their graph, remember the graph I brought up earlier, their graph would now look a little bit different in comparison to a normal person's. So here, so this is a normal person's. I cut the graph short just to show breakfast, but so at breakfast, for example, a normal person would be this low, eat, spike, bring it down because of the hormones. In a diabetic person, this line, it will come, it will stay normal, like it will stay flat, but already higher than a normal person's. And when they eat, it will spike just like a normal person's. But here's the key difference: um, they can't bring their glucose level down. See, here it's brought down extremely fast. Here it's brought down really slowly, and that's because this decrease is just because of cellular respiration, just because of the moving they're doing. They don't have the hormone. They can't bring it down effectively with the hormones like a normal person can do. So their blood glucose level stays high, and also it's much higher from the beginning. So how can you actually know if someone has diabetes? So what they do is, because you have more glucose in your blood, it means that eventually it will circulate and you need to pee. So when you pee, you'll have much more glucose in your blood if you're diabetic. So in your urine, doctors can take a test and they can see, oh, you have much more, you're out of the range, you have like a 10. And that means like you're out of the range of 4 to 8, you have a 10. And so you might be a diabetic. So that's how they see it. And there are two different kinds of diabetes. There's type 1 and type 2. Maybe you've heard of this. So I'm going to really visually try to explain now what their differences are. So type 1 occurs in young people, specifically babies. You're probably born with this if you have type 1. And only 10% of all diabetes people have this one. So this is the rare one. It's more rare. Now I'm going to explain real quick how it works. Why type 1 diabetes people have a problem. So this is the same thing. So remember, if your blood glucose level is really high, your beta cells will bring it below by using insulin. But the problem is, people with type 1 diabetes can't do this process. And the reason is, they can't do this. Their body can't bring it down. So when they eat cake, the only way they can bring it down is by doing exercise. And they can't, and that doesn't help. That's not fast enough. They need this hormone. They need this process to happen. Specifically, what doesn't work is not the whole process. It's specifically the first stage that doesn't work. Their beta cells don't work. Their beta cells can't make insulin. They're destroyed. Their body keeps destroying their own beta cells. So that means they can't produce insulin, which means there is no insulin to bring it down, to bring your blood glucose level down. So that's where the problem lies in type 1 diabetes. No beta cells. And this leads to a condition. This condition is called hyperglycemia. To break this down quite clearly, I don't know if you've heard of if someone is hyperactive. That's the same kind of meaning. Hyper would mean like, if someone's hyperactive, you know they have too much energy. So I kind of think of hyper as too much, like too high. And then glycemia here, you can think of as glucose level. So hyper and glycemia, you can split it in many of the medical words, you can split up into different parts and like figure out the meaning that way. So in this case, hyper would mean high, and glycemia means sugar. So in essence, if you're diagnosed with hyperglycemia, it sounds like you have some crazy disease, but it just means you have high blood sugar. And there's an opposite condition called hypoglycemia. And hypoglycemia just means low blood sugar. The prefix hypo means low, whereas hyper means high. So typically in diabetes, the problem is always too high blood sugar. You'll never have too low. So that's why hyperglycemia is kind of the only condition you can get from diabetes. And type 2, this is where 90% of the cases happen. And this typically happens in older people. But let's see what the problem is of this one. What is wrong with type 2 but diabetes people? What can't they do? So remember, in type 1, they don't have beta cells. What about type 2? So in type 2, actually, the funny thing is everything works, except the last stage. So in the first one, type 1, the first one doesn't work. Type 2, second one doesn't work. So the beta cells are there, they produce insulin, but the insulin can't bring it below. The reason being, the cells in your body can't understand insulin. They don't know what insulin wants. So when insulin comes to the cells and tell them your blood glucose is too high, they don't understand it. It's almost like insulin is speaking a different language from your body. Like insulin might maybe speaking like Spanish or something, and you are English, and then you're like, okay, we have insulin, but I don't know what insulin wants me to do. So the body can't bring it down. So that's the difference. And it's easier type 1 and type 2, remember, it's easy to remember which one is which, because in type 1 the first step fails, in type 2 the second step fails. So quite easy to remember that as well. So again, this leads to the same condition, hyperglycemia. Not only does this happen in older people, but also in fat people. And this does not only imply people who are just fat from no exercise. It could mean other things as well, which I'll explain here on the last part. So what are causes and symptoms? So we just learned about what each of them are. So what are causes and symptoms of type 1 and type 2 diabetes? So type 2 diabetes is caused typically by being old or fat, just by getting older or more fat. So what causes obesity? Most people think, oh, it's just your diet. It's just the way you eat and exercise. That's true. That's one of them. Lack of exercise and diet is definitely one. But also, a lot of people are just unlucky, and it's genetics. They can't lose weight because of their genetics. So that could mean you're fat. Like I said, also could be old, or there has been cases where it happened in younger people that were just extremely fat. So if you're young and extremely fat, there's still a chance you could have it. But typically, most of the time, it's just older and fatter people that get it. And if you were a doctor, how would you tell your patient to fix this problem? So to fix this, you can't really fix it, but you can maintain it. There is no real cure to diabetes. So you can maintain it though. How do you maintain it? So there's two things, diet. So you can think of it, for this fat person to get healthy, they need to have a diet and exercise. They gotta exercise more to bring their blood glucose down faster, and they gotta have a diet that makes sure that their blood glucose level doesn't go so high. That means less sugar, look at this Coke, less sugar, less of the bad foods, basically, and more of the good foods like fibers, because fibers take so long to be absorbed by your body. So when you eat it, it will take so long to actually get into your body, which means that your blood glucose level can't rise that quickly. It will take much longer time to rise, which is much better. Because if you eat a cake, you'll have a high blood sugar in like 2 hours, which you eat pasta, it takes much longer, which is what they want to do. So that's the kind of diet you want to follow. How about the other one? So and again, exercise to bring that blood glucose down. Now, lastly, we get to here, type 1. So type 1, like I said, the beta cells don't work. So basically, like your own body, the reason why is because your own body is destroying their own beta cells. So they can't produce insulin. And this means to fix this, you need to somehow take insulin into your body. Because if your body can't make insulin by itself, you need a sort of medicine that can give you insulin. Because then you're pretty much normal. If you can just give insulin to yourself, that insulin can do what it's supposed to do and bring your blood glucose level down. So what they have is something called an insulin pen. I don't know if you have a diabetic friend or something, they may have this around them, and every time they eat at lunch or something, they'll inject themselves with this, and that'll make sure their blood glucose level goes down because they're injecting themselves with a hormone that their body cannot make. So I really hope all of this made sense. Right now, for those of you who came here for IB questions, these are really a bunch of multiple choice ones, and you'll see based on them they're all so similar. Because in the IB, but I'll explain them and go through them because it could be hard if you don't understand what's going on. So we'll do it one by one. So first question, if you watch the video above, you should be able to answer all these questions quite easily. And these are real IB questions. I didn't pick easy ones. These are literally these could be hard or easy as well. Didn't try to make it easy on purpose. So what is the characteristic of type 2 diabetes? So remember in the video above, type 2 diabetes is the one where you're fat, you're obese, and your body doesn't recognize insulin. Insulin is like a different language to them. They don't know what to do with it. So let's look at the options. A, insufficient insulin. That's not true because your body does make insulin. So there's not insufficient of it. It makes insulin, it just doesn't understand insulin, right? So A cannot be correct. Let's go B. Insulin insensitivity. What that means is it's insensitive to insulin, which means it doesn't understand insulin. It doesn't react to insulin. This makes sense because your body does make the insulin, but the insulin cannot have an effect because the body doesn't understand what it wants. So this could be correct, but let's keep going and make sure that is the correct answer. Excess glucagon. So in your body, it's saying there's too much glucagon, but that's not true. All the other hormones are the same for the, type 2 and type 1 diabetes. It's just insulin that it doesn't recognize. So that can't be correct. And then the last one here, low white blood cell count. That's not relevant to diabetes because white blood cells are supposed to fight your disease, like flu or something. So this is not even relevant. So we know that it's going to be B. Now let's go move on to the next one, which describes the secretion of hormones in the pancreas in response to low levels of glucose in the blood. So remember, the pancreas is where all these islets are, and these hormones that regulate your glucose level. So let's go A. So they're asking you what happens in response to low levels. So we know to bring it above, you need alpha cells to release what? Yeah, glucagon. So you're going to need secretion of glucagon from alpha cells. Oh, that's correct. That's the first answer. How about B? Secretion of glucagon from B cells. No, that's not true because glucagon is always released from alpha cells. Secretion of insulin from alpha cells. See, that's incorrect because insulin is always released from beta cells. So even the concept-wise, that's not correct. And D, this one could be correct, but this is in response to high blood levels, not low blood levels. So D can't be correct. So the only answer here that's correct is A. So another one. What characterizes type 1 diabetes? Let's look at the answers. So it can be controlled by diet alone. So type 1 is where it happens in babies and their beta cells don't work. So diet doesn't have an effect. Diet happens in type 2 diabetes. Risk factors such as obesity increase its frequency. That's not true again. This happens in type 2. Remember the obese person, that was type 2. The alpha cells of the pancreas are destroyed, usually during childhood. This is incorrect only because it's not alpha cells. We know beta cells are destroyed. So the last one should say beta cells. Yeah, and it says the beta cells of the pancreas are destroyed, usually during childhood, because we know it happens at a young age. And again, that's correct. One last question here. What is the body's response to low blood glucose levels? Alpha cells in the pancreas, so low blood glucose levels, so you want to bring it above, so alpha cells need to release glucagon. So alpha cells in the pancreas secrete glucagon. See, that's very easy, and we know that's correct, but we'll check the other ones just in case you guys get confused. So beta cells in the pancreas secrete insulin. This is correct, but this is to bring it down if it's too high. They're asking if it's too low, how do you bring it up? So alpha cells in the pancreas secrete insulin. Yeah, we know, but insulin brings it down, and insulin is secreted by beta cells, so this is incorrect concept-wise. Beta cells in the pancreas secrete glucagon. This is incorrect concept-wise because alpha cells would secrete glucagon. So obviously, answer here would be A. I really hope you guys understood all of this. If you guys want me to make PowerPoints or just videos just based on questions like this, I can bring up more long answer questions, more multiple choice questions. But really, this is like, I didn't pick easy questions. These are hard. So I hope that my explanation made it clear, and subscribe if you want more because that would help me, and comment any questions I would answer.